A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth and moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today, we'll be talking about the importance of keeping up with your mental health on the journey to healing and self-growth with Jennifer Mullowney, who has obtained her Master of Social Work degree and works with individuals 18 years and older. Her goal is to provide support and guidance while working with her clients when developing their treatment goals. As a therapist, her favorite thing is seeing her clients feel better and improve, and she believes finding the right fit with a therapist is an essential part of the therapy process. She focuses on areas of depression, anxiety, grief, loss, relationship, and family issues, as well as women's issues. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Jennifer. So excited to chat with your expertise on mental health and healing.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
When it comes to mental health, what inspired you to start to want to help people, and what made you choose women's issues and also focusing on areas of like dealing with depression? I feel like that's a really prominent theme. A lot of people are going through
Sure.
depression. Yeah.
Sure. I guess, I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in college. And every assessment I took kind of came up like helper, the helping profession. And so that's kind of broad, but I knew I wanted to do something I didn't really know it was called social work, because social work to me was like, I don't know, kind of had more of a negative connotation, I guess, when I was thinking of it, or like working with really. So I knew I wanted to help people and do therapy.
If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at balletartsmovement@gmail.com. First class free.
And so I had a really good mentor in college that was like, why don't you get your Master of Social Work degree and then get your clinical license, and you can do what you want to do. That's kind of the path to what you want to do. So then I started working with actually involuntary clients. I worked at a residential facility for teens. I worked at a correctional center for adults. And then when I got into doing outpatient, I kind of just found that where I thought I was doing the best work were with those suffering from depression, anxiety, women's issues, grief and loss. That kind of seemed to be more of my niche, I guess. So as I continued in, outpatient, that's kind of the clients that I started to tend to see and, still see.
So interesting. That's amazing. And the work you're doing is so impactful, because I feel like so often we really need to talk to somebody, and it's sometimes hard to even accept that we actually need help. And it's like,
Sure.
yeah, we want to reach out and we don't even know where to begin. What are some tips that you have for people, for maybe like they don't even know like where to begin, or how to know if somebody is a good therapist for them?
Yeah, it can be really hard to find a therapist, let alone the right therapist. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that say like, gosh, I've been calling a million places, and you really, if you, most people probably want to use their insurance. So I feel like that's a good place to start. There are, there are sites like Psychology Today where there a lot of therapists advertise on their profiles. Even just going to your insurance website and call, like, you might have to call everybody on the list, and confirm that they take your insurance. And they can see, they can see you, and it's going to take probably a lot of phone calls, which can be hard for people if they're wanting to seek help, because maybe they don't want to, it's hard to talk about, or you're talking with a stranger about it, but sometimes it helps to like make a list each other, like, okay, I'm going to call like 5 providers today, or I'm going to call this place, or I'm
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the #1 purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast.
But also, if they're comfortable asking for referrals, family or friends online, a lot of times people can reach out and like maybe anonymously they can post or ask, like in a community page, who's a good therapist in the area, so you may get a referral that way too. I've seen a lot of people do that recently. And sometimes just driving around too, you might see, notice things. But as far as the right fit, I think you probably have to give it a good 3 or 4 sessions. The first session with someone is going to be, especially if you've been holding things in, it's just going to, it's maybe hard to tell. They're going to be doing a lot of listening, the therapist, maybe asking some questions. There's not going to be, a lot of people will say to me, like, when's the therapy start? And it's, you have to kind of get to know someone, get comfortable with them, and feel like, okay, I can trust this person. So sometimes the intakes can take like 1 or 2 sessions to get all the information out there and figure out what their goals are. And then, give it a couple sessions to kind of where you start to get to the heart of things. And then you also have to ask yourself, what are you looking for? Do you want a therapist who is straightforward and will tell you, or someone who's more observant and may let you figure things out on yourself before pointing them out, I guess. Everyone has a different style.
Yes,
So
100%.
I think it's important to think about, like when you've talked to friends or family about your issues, what have you liked that they've done that helped? And then maybe in a therapist, you might like the same thing.
ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial, link in the description of the podcast. Yeah, that's great advice. And also like knowing what is your goal, right? Like what do you want to achieve going to therapy, and like what do you want to
Sure.
like, I guess, fix or understand more about yourself or find clarity.
Sure. Absolutely. What's your goal? And then also recognizing that your goal might change, or you might start thinking about something and realize, oh, it is connected to this. And even though I didn't want to talk about this, I might have to because it's connected to what's going on. So just be open-minded, I guess.
Yes, totally. And when it comes to people who are currently dealing with transitional phases of growing out of their environment, and whether it is toxic, as many people do go through shifts and changes, what are some tips for dealing with that? Could be really difficult to deal with transitional phase.
Sure. So if you're going through a transitional phase and it's something like you feel like it wasn't a good environment for you, and maybe you're transitioning, you want to, remind yourself like why you chose to leave that environment. There was a reason you chose to leave it, and you want to trust your gut. And realize that, prioritizing your mental health is the #1 thing.
TeloVital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for TeloVital. Link in the description of the podcast.
So you have to kind of remember your why. Like, there was a reason I did this. It wasn't just because I felt like there was a why. And maybe there wasn't a supportive workplace, or there wasn't a supportive friendship or relationship. And so you want to keep that kind of at the forefront. So to use as motivation, going forward. And then I think you want to think about what are healthy boundaries for you in relationships, whether it's work, home, school, what have you, and reinforce those. So a lot of times, if you're in a situation that you wanted to transition out of, you find that personal boundaries may have been eroded. Maybe you were saying yes all the time, or there were too many negative influences, or you just didn't feel good about it. It just didn't feel right for you. And you want to be, maybe it's defining a work-life balance, negative influences, limiting yourself to that, being selective about what you say yes to, there's a saying like no is a complete sentence. You can say no to things. You don't have to give a
Yes.
why, you know.
Yes, that's such a
Um,
good thing for people to learn, because sometimes there's this level of guilt when you are kind of putting up your boundaries. You
sure.
have to like rewire your brain to accept, like, no, like you mentioned, yes, no is a full sentence. You don't have to go deeper. You don't have to explain anything. That takes like self courage.
It totally does, and it can take practice, and that's something you can role play with a therapist too. Like you can always, like I've done that with clients where I'll say, okay, if they get to the point where they're ready to
I
have
love
a difficult
that.
conversation with someone, yeah, you can role play like, okay, I'm going to be your mom, your boyfriend, whoever I need to be, your friend, whatever, boss. And like, let's practice and, kind of go through what they might say, but you kind of stick to like, no, or your whatever your boundary is.
I love that. I love
Um,
that. Yes.
and yeah, and then, obviously speaking with the therapist to process your emotions. Having a good support network is so important too. Your friends aren't going to be your friends, aren't going to be your therapist, but just have other people to go, and your therapist is the unbiased third party, but you want a good support network around you. Then that's a question I ask in intakes. A lot of people are like, who do you have to go to for support? You're having a bad day, who can you go to talk to cheer you up, to remind you of, how great you are, or the boundaries that you want to have. um, and it's never good, you know, um, to avoid that isolation, and the negative thoughts that go within the feeling like you're so isolated.
I love
Um,
that. Yes.
and then, I always say like embrace your growth. So talk about like the positive changes you've had, keep focusing on them. You also want to set realistic goals. Sometimes clients have, like, we all want to, sometimes achieve everything. But you want to start small with the goals, because you don't want to set yourself up for failure, and having
Yes.
the goal be, it's not, I don't want to say it's not attainable, but just like small steps to get there.
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast.
So yeah, so set realistic goals. Self-care is important. Taking care of yourself, doing the things you want to do. If it was a toxic friendship or relationship, maybe you didn't do things that you always wanted to do. So that can be a time to do those things.
100%. I remember like going
Yeah,
through like shifts in environment, and even sometimes when you're shifting friendships, and finding that level of accountability and sovereignty is challenging, and it's also really helpful because it's like the smallest things that you decide for yourself that you want, like even if you choose like some kind of candy or an ice cream flavor that you feel comfortable choosing, that nobody gave you any like manipulative, you know, direction towards. It's like you making
sure.
those decisions. How important is
Absolutely.
that?
Oh, so important. Right. You take ownership of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no one was telling me what to do. This is what I chose, and that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's something that doesn't, you have to keep reminding yourself of that. So it said like celebrate your growth, like those little things are important too. And the boundaries, I mean, those that are toxic will, are not good for you, will try to push that boundary again. It's like you set the boundary and everybody obeys it. It's
it's almost like
everybody's, yeah, they might, uh, try to, wiggle around it. So you need to keep setting it, keep reminding it, and that's when you remember the why too. Like, this is why I have this in the first place.
that's amazing. Yes, it's so important to just take that time and to recognize your value through your desires. That's so good.
Absolutely, sure, definitely,
And when it comes to dealing with another toxic environment or like a breakup, and there could be some, post breakup depression symptoms, anxiety,
sure,
like, lower mood, what are some productive tips to deal with those symptoms to help you
sure.
navigate through that?
I would say, take time to heal, especially if it's been a long-term relationship, something you're gonna get over in a week or two. Um, so definitely take time for yourself. If you don't want to go out, or that maybe you want to hibernate for a little bit, that's okay, as long as you are taking care of yourself and maybe setting small goals each day. Maybe the goal is like, I'm going to get up, go to work, and come home, or I'm going to get up and do my laundry today, whatever it is, like a small goal. But it's okay to, take some time for you then. And then I also will ask people maybe to do a gratitude journal, or list like 3 things they're grateful for each day. Maybe one day you have one thing you're grateful for, and that's okay. Every couple of days it might be hard. If you're listening to the same things, maybe, okay, I have one other thing I'm grateful for. But the same things is okay too. Just kind of, again, reminding you of your why. Um, and then, utilizing your support system if you have one. If you don't have one, that's when I would suggest definitely building one. Maybe that relationship you didn't have the time for it, or
Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
maybe you're in a new city or something, but getting out and doing things you once enjoyed, or maybe you always wanted to try to do, and maybe try to build a support network that way. Um, and trying to reach out to, having that support network or creating one. Um, and then, taking time to explore your interests. Maybe there's a past interest you haven't done in a while, or there's a new one you want to do. So that can help too. But and initially I think it's okay if you want to take some time to just kind of exist and process it all. And then, of course, talking to a therapist can always help wherever you are in that process. And if you go to therapy, some people say, well, I didn't want to come right afterwards because I would just cry the whole time. Like, that's okay too. That's okay.
I
That's
love that.
fine.
Yes. It's like, don't give yourself so much pressure to just right away try to heal
Exactly.
so quickly.
Give yourself grace, right.
Yes.
Give yourself grace and time, and you don't have to dissect the relationship immediately, like there'll be a time and place for that,
Yeah, I
when you're
love
ready.
that. Yes, you explain that so beautifully. It's so true. It's
Oh,
like,
thank you.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
allow yourself to not rush into the healing, because I think oftentimes when we realize that we did something that's not in alignment with our best self or our happiest self, we want to fix it so quickly because sometimes we feel shame or guilt, or like we feel like we're responsible for that part of our life. So it's like we have to
sure.
kind of take, like you mentioned, have grace for that, and not to take so much responsibility on yourself if it was a two-party, or if it was like a friendship, or yeah, like a relationship.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You want, you need to give yourself that time, and not listen to pressure. Like, somebody might always have, and when I say support system, I mean like people that are generally care about you and want to support you and are okay with just, letting you cry for a little bit, and then like watching a movie or whatever, not saying that, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, like that, um, there's a time and a place. Those friends are good, but maybe not right in the beginning. You want
Because
to,
yes, they're going to be like, this is
yeah,
nice, do this, do
you
that.
want to be ready for it, right? Sure, right.
Yes,
Not have that pressure.
exactly.
Yes,
And speaking about like friendships, how can we know when we have a friendship that is contributing to our negative emotions or negative feelings, especially when it is like from childhood, because I know a lot of us carry like friendships from our childhood,
sure,
and as
sure,
adults that that shift
sure.
sometimes into negative spaces.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, lots of things can change. Lifestyles change, marriage, kids, divorce, whatever, moving across country, moving out of the country, just interests change. I think you want to ask yourself, like, how do you feel after you talk to or spend time with someone? Do you feel like, I'll say, people are, battery chargers and like battery drainers. Some people kind of drain our battery, or like, oh, okay, like I need to recharge after that. Maybe they're a little too negative. But do they charge, do you feel energized, or do you just feel good? Do you feel relaxed? If you're feeling more times than not that you're feeling anxious more often than not, that could be a sign. Or just feeling sad or just kind of down. Every friend can have like an off night or, an off conversation. But I guess if there's I was like, thinking more of like a pattern. Do you find yourself questioning things about yourself after you talk to them? Are you like, oh my gosh, they're doing this. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And maybe they're things you really don't want to do, but you feel that pressure. And do you feel like you don't feel like you're good enough, or you're getting that feeling again, that what you're doing isn't good enough? Do they let you share and not judge you? Do they take time and consider your feelings and take time for you? And generally, you seem like they're interested in you. I would say those are probably the biggest things.
That's yeah. Those are great tips for everybody to kind of look into, because when we are growing up, we kind of are unconscious, or we subconsciously just reconnect all the time. And sometimes we
Sure,
have to become more aware and more present with the connection and the friendship. And if it's actually offering valuable insight, and it's offering, like you mentioned, like being helpful and actually caring for you, which it takes that kind of like, sometimes it's in hindsight where we go through arguments or situations where we feel betrayed, and we're like, oh, wait a second, is that what a friend does? And it's like we have to reevaluate all of that.
sure, sure. Yeah, and that's okay. And just because you were friends when you were younger doesn't mean you have to be keeping friends. And or doesn't mean they have to even be a close friend. Maybe there's someone you see occasionally or talk to occasionally.
100%.
Or
Yes.
yeah, it can, or maybe it's someone that you're like, I don't really have a connection with this person. That's okay.
Yeah, and then it's like we have to go back to like our attachment styles, and to be like, how are we attached, and how is
Exactly.
our
Sure.
childhood
Right.
affecting that, right?
Exactly. Right. I mean, when you're kids, you don't really have, it's like your friends at school, your friends in the neighborhood, maybe if you do activities, your friends with, you have little control. It's interesting because it's when, as you're growing up, you're probably introduced to the most people you're ever going to meet as far as friends go, and as you get older, it gets more
Yes,
narrow. Because people are always like, I feel bad. I don't have any childhood friends. Well, that's okay, because maybe the childhood friends that person has aren't, maybe they just are there because that's who they were hanging out with. Yeah, but it is
exactly.
harder to make friends as you get older. So as you learn how to be friends, that's when you have to make more of an effort to become friends. But it can also be beautiful in that you make your own community, you find your people, your person. And I always tell people, like, you will, you know, when I used to work with teens, they'd say, I haven't found my person yet. It's like, that's okay. They're out there. You have to just keep going. It's okay. Don't settle for,
Yes, yes, that's great. That's really great. And do you personally, like as a therapist, do you get really drained from, helping so many people? Do you have your own therapist as well, or how do you deal with like mental relaxation or finding
sure.
peace?
Absolutely. Yeah. Self care is really important. So I will schedule, when I first started outpatient, I would schedule maybe like 8 or 9 people a day. That's,
Wow.
that's a little much for me now. Yeah. So now that I'm on my own, I can set my own schedule. I might do like 5 clients maximum a day, because I know that's kind of my limit. Um, and then I do have, like a supervision group that I meet with, a couple different ones. And so we might meet, like once a month. And sometimes it gets a little bit longer than that, but usually right around once a month, where we get together and review cases. I always, if I have a difficult case where I'm feeling stuck, um, I always have colleagues I can go to do like a one-on-one, supervision.
Yes.
Um, if it's not something I want to wait to like a group supervision or something like that, getting outside, going for a walk, spend time with my family. Yeah, so I'm blessed that I've worked in several different states. I've been doing this a long time, so I have a lot of colleagues. So I can always reach out and say, like, hey, I'm feeling
That's
a little sad. Or what would you do in this situation? Or do you have a workbook you'd recommend, or something like that? And that usually talking to them kind of recharges my battery a little bit.
I love that. Yeah, sometimes
Yeah,
just like reconnecting with people to remind us that we need support, it's such a beautiful thing to acknowledge. I love
sure,
that.
sure, sure.
Wow, what a beautiful
Yeah.
conversation. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on the podcast. You shared
Thank you for
everything.
having me.
Yeah, you shared everything with so much warmth and so much wisdom. So thank you for what you're doing for the mental health community. And hopefully our audience will be inspired to take those next steps and take charge of their mental health and really prioritize that for the purpose of loving themselves deeply and feeling more allowing themselves to embrace mental health as top priority.
Sure. Absolutely. I hope so. Thank
Yes. And
you.
where can people connect with you and see your content or anything that you're sharing or offering?
Sure. So they can search me under my name, Jennifer Mullowney on Psychology Today. Facebook page is Crossroads Counseling Services.